Hey, what's up, everyone? How's it going? So we've got a very, very special guest today. Basically somebody who I've got to know recently, and he's coming over to London soon. So hopefully we're going to connect there. And we've been working together as well. We've kind of just been getting to know each other, new online friends. But okay, why I wanted to bring Stefan on, and by the way, Stefan, thanks so much for coming on. But why I wanted to bring you on mainly is because I saw an ad about a year ago, right? And it popped up on my Facebook feed, and it was like automated webinars software for, I don't know, $70, something like that. I can't remember the exact price. One-time fee, right? And I was thinking, really? Okay. Now, obviously I, at the moment, have been using for the last 2-3 years, Webinar Jam, right? And Ever Webinar. So I was like, okay, I'm running these automated webinars to my list. And when you press the Webinar Jam thing, you get this kind of cog, and it takes about 3 or 4 seconds. And I noticed with you, I got yours, like, because it was like, well, okay, $70, right? Let's just get it. So I got it, and I noticed that yours, it came up and it was really fast and it was really good. So I did a side-by-side test, and it was kind of like yours was outperforming, for the auto webinar, it was outperforming Webinar Jam. And I was thinking, wow, this is really cool. Hopefully we'll get you to come on the show and have a chat with you. And obviously now here you are. So I just wanted to give you that backstory, because I know, I haven't actually told you that bit yet. But what a cool bit of software, man. So we're gonna obviously, today I want to talk to you about that. But first of all, I just want to say, why, what's your story? Why did you decide? What was you doing before that, really? And what was your kind of sort of progression into kind of doing webinars?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, Paul, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we've also been starting to connect over the past a few weeks here. I'm definitely excited for the working relationship moving forward. But in general, look, I got started online probably around 2015. I was dabbling in a few things before then, probably 2014. I was working a full-time job as an engineer, living in the northeast of the US in Connecticut. It's a very boring area. There's not much to do. It's a lot of families. And here I was just out of college. I was in my early 20s. I was pretty miserable. And I had a friend living in New York City at the time. And I had always been entrepreneurial in my youth. I built websites around age 13 or 14. I sold autographs that I would collect through the mail online. So I had this kind of internet marketing side of me in youth that kind of got suppressed when I went to college and studied engineering, but it was always still inside of me. And then when I, started working a 9-to-5 here in the US in Connecticut, I was bored. I was working with people 40 years my senior. I was not really loving the lifestyle and listening to them complain about how miserable they were and how only 10 more years till retirement. And I was like, I am not going to be doing this for the rest of my life. But when you talk about starting businesses to people who work 9-to-5s, generally they don't believe it's a real thing, or, they feel like it's something that's so unachievable. So, there's a lot of those limiting beliefs floating out there in the ether, especially among people who go the 9-to-5 route. Now, if you're happy in your 9-to-5, that's great. But if you're unhappy, I could firstly say there is a lot more out there that you could explore. So, I started with these side income streams online. I saw some blogs from digital nomads around 2014 that were traveling the world and had these online income streams. And basically, I eventually started going down this rabbit hole of a few side hustles. I wasn't expecting to be a full-time entrepreneur, but I started doing eBay selling. I did Kindle publishing. I eventually built this little niche blog about dogs that I basically started ranking in Google, and then also drove a lot of traffic to it from Pinterest. And I got very, very good at that. And I kind of realized that a lot of these people that were digital nomads, they were basically not only doing the method that they were teaching, but they were also selling the course that taught other people how to do it. And oftentimes, as you know, there's a lot more money in teaching than there is in doing. So basically at that point, I kind of had a shift in my own brain where I was like, well, I'm doing these niche sites. I'm doing Pinterest. And I started, thinking to myself, like, this Pinterest method could help a lot of people. So basically from there, I started selling courses on Pinterest, and I kind of found the whole world of affiliate marketing. I began publishing my Pinterest course for a low price. I started on Warrior Plus. I eventually kind of started selling on JVZoo. So I kind of came from that world. And, I made friends with all of these different affiliates around the world. And basically around September 2015, I said to myself, I'm doing well enough now that I could quit my job. So I actually left my full-time job in, I believe, September of 2015. Eventually, 2016, moved to New York City, was, living a mid-20s fun life there for a while. I wanted to try something else after a little while since I had the lifestyle. So from there, I kind of moved to Philadelphia. And when I was in Philly, my business started to kind of evolve. So I was selling my courses for a very low price. And from there, I realized that I could be selling this information for a lot more money because it was getting people phenomenal results. So from there, I started selling my course closer to around $400 to $500. And at this point, I saw the power. I saw other people using webinars to sell their products. So I said to myself, well, this seems to be the way to go. As opposed to selling for a low price via a sales page, I should create a webinar that really showcases how powerful this Pinterest method is, and then sell a course on the back end of that. So I started doing that. And, I had a big audience from all of the courses I sold for a low ticket price. So I started finding all these affiliates that were in the webinar space and basically doing a bunch of cross promotions with them. I let my audience know about their products. They let their audience know about my webinar and then my product. So eventually my business kind of expanded. So in addition to having the Pinterest course, I also developed a coaching program because some percentage of people were asking for more help. And then on top of that, some percentage of people were saying, Stefan, I don't have time to do this myself. Can you do it for me? So I actually built a small agency, and I had a team in the Philippines that were helping me basically run this agency. And had a few clients every month that would come to me and basically charge them to run the Pinterest marketing for them. So I had a full-fledged agency. Now, around that time, a close friend of mine, this was a few years ago at this point, must have been 2019, he came to me and, he was an established engineer working for a Fortune 500 company here in the US. And he said to me, he's like, let's do something together. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're doing all these webinars. Like, there's got to be something in the webinar space that we could do. And when I looked into it, I said, there are a lot of problems with some of these software out there. At the time, I don't want to name drop too much. I was using one of the big ones, and there were so many issues that I was facing, similar to the thing you brought up before, like the cog. There were things that were just annoying using them. I found them to be kind of like buggy and like not smooth. So I said to him, webinars are so powerful and there's still so many people who don't know about them. And to be fair, I also wanted a better software for myself because I was running a lot of webinars in my business. It's like, I want something better for myself that, is something we can also sell to help others get better results in their own webinar marketing, whether they know about webinars already or not. So basically at that point, we went down a path of engineering, a new solution to webinar marketing and, especially starting with automated webinars. And in 2020, WebinarKit was born, and we've been running it for just over 2 years now. Our team has started growing, and we have a lot of happy customers. We actually have over 10,000 people now that have picked up the automated tool. So we've done quite well with that. And at the moment, we're also expanding out into live webinars and also sales calls because, we want to take that winning WebinarKit framework and apply it to more things that you could do with webinars or getting live with people on sales calls. So in a nutshell, that's kind of been the progression. I loved webinars so much that I co-founded a webinar software. So that's kind of where we are today. And, we have a lot of people happy with WebinarKit, and we're continuing every day to grow the company and get more people learning about it as well as jumping on board.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, man. I mean, that's literally your life story right. So first of all, like 2015, I just want to clarify, right? 2015, because I've been doing this since 2002, but really I've been doing this since 2015. So I came into this new world because what I discovered was WordPress, right? I picked up WordPress in 2015 and I was blown away. I was like, back in the day, I was making these websites on Microsoft front page, right? So I was kind of like, WordPress is amazing. And then, like you say, I started attending all these webinars and all these different things. And, there's quite a few things you mentioned in that. And, it's kind of like, so you're right. Obviously, running, like showing people how to do stuff has been booming since about 2015. I would say actually, it's kind of getting stronger and stronger every year. Like the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, have just been bonkers for people selling courses. So congrats on that. And obviously you were selling, because I can remember actually talking to you a couple of years ago or a year ago about your Pinterest course. And you were telling me about it. And the fact is that I actually at the time was getting a bit of results with Pinterest as well. So I know how powerful some of these social media platforms are. Like Pinterest in itself, like there's some things there that, I still think Pinterest is wide open in itself, because there's just a lot of stuff going on, right? Like now TikTok, now YouTube, now, and all this different stuff. And it's like, what do you focus on, right? So there's just so much opportunity out there. So, I mean, congrats on that. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right about, obviously we'll come to the webinar stuff in a minute, but you're absolutely right about some of the problems with some of the platforms. And you and me have been using these platforms for the last few years, and we're not going to name drop, but for instance, I'll mention that thing with Webinar Jam, that cog they never used to have that, right? They used to have a pop-up page and it worked, but then they had to move over from one platform. Mike Phil Same explained it to me, actually. It was something to do with their license. They had to move it over. They had to change it. There was some sort of big issue they had to change. And I can't remember exactly what it was. So I don't want to obviously get myself in hot water, but basically that cog was part of the Kartra system rather than the old system that they had. And if you do anything on Kartra, you get that cog. It's the same thing. And that cog's 1 or 2 seconds or whatever. But that thing in itself, if you're running paid ads to a webinar page, right, to something that you're going to kind of log in, sign up with, that can and will hurt conversions. And, and I think the thing is, if you're using webinars, this is what I always speak to software developers and things like that. They say the one thing that usually comes out, and it's the same for you, obviously, I just heard you say it. It's something that you wanted to build for yourself, right? Because it's it doesn't exist. And I'm at that stage now where I see things and I'm trying to use things over here and there. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to flip and build this thing because it's not doing what I want it to do, right? And I totally get that, man. I totally get that. So, so a couple of things about about some of the stuff you just said. So you talk about digital nomads. Now, I saw you do a video the other day and really inspired me. I told you about this. And it's kind of because I live in the UK and I live in a really cool place in Brighton, but it's, it's the UK, right? So it's flipping cold in the winter. And and you go to, you travel around the world and you've got your software developer guy, Phil, who I met the other day. You two, quite often go together and you'll hang out and you'll have, you put this video up and you had all these different people there. And I thought, man, I'm totally joining you on one of those kind of digital nomad excursions. And you was out in, was it Medellin? Was that what it's called? I see. I don't even know.
Yeah, I was in the most recent was Medellin, Colombia. So it was beautiful, really great.
Yeah. So yes, what you do, you're from New York, right? So you'll go out to these hot countries for a few weeks or for a few months, and you'll travel around, and and I think that's really cool, man. You've created that. You're literally. So you in 2015, you said you were out of college, right? Is that what you said?
So I actually graduated 2012, and then 2015, I ended up leaving my full-time job, leaving my 9-to-5, and firing my boss. That's when I kind of really went full-blown entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you worked full-time as an engineer for 3 years? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Oh man, I wish I'd have done that when I was younger. I didn't start my first business until I was 30 years old because it kind of wasn't happening, right? I'm 50 now. So it wasn't happening. And I was I just had this whole vision that I didn't have any kind of one telling me that I could do that. So I kind of had this whole vision. As soon as I started my own business, my life was going to be hell, right? Because I thought, well, I'm just going to be working all the time. And I actually do work all the time. But the funny thing is now I'm doing stuff I want to do rather than for someone else. And it was actually so much better life working for myself. So, but by the way, I just want to say congrats on WebinarKit, man. I mean,
thank you.
And I'm also, by the way, I'm glad you came out with the live version because there's a couple of people out there that have just done the auto version. And I don't know if this occurred to you, but it occurred to me that people in the industry will know it's an auto webinar if there's not a live version. So not that having an auto webinar where you're authentic about it and saying it's, you know, it's not necessarily good, that's fine. But sometimes you want that live experience. And I just thought, oh, I'm glad you've got that, because that's kind of, you know, and I can remember you putting up like it's coming soon and you were developing it. But you've just been on rocket fuel, man, since like you've literally gone from these different versions. You've now got WebinarKit Live. And we actually just did a webinar on your WebinarKit Live, and amazing platform. So do you mind telling me some of? Oh no, you kind of did, didn't you? And we don't want to name call, but I wanted to kind of just understand like maybe just a couple of the kind of problems that you were having with some of the webinar softwares that you managed to put into this, because I think that's kind of key here, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do that, just going to comment on the whole working for yourself thing. So yeah, I'm sure we both work a lot, but the thing, like you said, it's like, I actually was on a date the other day, and, you know, the girl was like, so you work like 50 hours a week? I'm like, yeah, but it's not work to me. I enjoy what I do. I'm not one of these people that like clocks in and clocks out from enjoying life. You know, I'm always enjoying life, even if I'm working. Sounds like you're the same way. I mean, that's the difference, right? And that's why I love connecting with other entrepreneurs, because I feel like we get it. And, you know, we all kind of feel that way of, we actually like what we do and we like what we produce and we're passionate about it. So to that point, totally agree with you. You know, so it's so much, we work a lot, but we do the things we like. And then the other cool thing is we could take extended breaks. As you mentioned, I was digital nomading around, and, you know, most jobs, at least here in the US, I'm not sure how it is in England, but I imagine you guys probably get a little bit more vacation, but you know, you don't really get more than 2-3 weeks a year that you could go anywhere. So sometimes people just take 1 or 2 weeks to stay at home, and then they might just travel one week a year. And, you know, I cannot live that lifestyle after. There's no going back, I guess is what I mean. You know, once you are an entrepreneur, I encourage all entrepreneurs to travel more, because it is a privilege and it's amazing to be able to go to all these different places and you meet other people who do the same thing. So I just wanted to comment on that front. But anyway, so as far as that goes,
oh, by the way, before you just as a side note to this, guys, I'll put a link to Stefan's digital. It was on your YouTube channel, wasn't it? So I'll put a link in the show in the if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening on the podcast, I'll put a link direct to that video, because it really inspired me. And I told you that I was like, you know, this is. Again, like obviously, I know I went traveling to Australia when I was 25, right? I went traveling around Australia. I went to New Zealand. I love traveling. I've done a lot of stuff in my, you know, especially in my younger life. But I don't know why it just hasn't occurred to me lately. I've just been sitting in this. This used to be my bedroom, right? I've like now turned this into my office. So I'm sort of in that room over there, and I just sit here and I go out and I go for walks along the seafront and I come in. And it just kind of, when I saw your thing and I was like, you know, that's so obvious. It's such an obvious thing. And of course, there's going to be these hubs of people like us that are going out and wanting to work and thinking, well, address is not, because when I started my first business, I was, I just turned 30 years old. No, actually it was on the January 2002, right? So it's 20 years ago. So I was 1 month from turning 30. So I was 29 years old. And it took me a good few months to get this working. And when it started working, I was like, I don't need an address where I live. I'd sold my house. I was kipping on my mate's floor. This thing was working and I was making a bit of money. And I was like, I can do whatever I want. So I moved down to Cornwall, Newquay in Cornwall. It's like surfing. It's not compared to some of the surf you've got over there, but basically, you know, it's the best surf we've got in the UK, and it's really beautiful down there. And I just went down there for a year, and that was kind of like my digital nomad year at that, you know, stage. And then I came to Brighton and I just sort of settled. So, and again, I just kind of lost that thought process, and it was kind of like, I can still do that. You know, I'm single at the moment. Like I live on my own. I got nothing really tying me to anything. I've got, I paid off my mortgage here in 2019, but I've got obviously a place, but this will be, I could just leave this here, you know, it doesn't matter. So it's kind of like, you know, it's so many things. So I'll put that link and I urge you all to watch it. It's actually really, really well put together. So I really enjoyed that. But
awesome.
Yeah. So no, I applaud you for that, man. And I think that's definitely, It's just obvious when you see it. It's like, of course, all these things exist. It's like, but again, I've lived in my own world sometimes. I'm just doing this, and I'm like, okay, yeah. So cool for you for that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
no, I mean, we'll take a trip together at one point. We'll go somewhere,
mate. Yeah. You're going to give me your itinerary, I think, at some point next year, and I'm just going to come and join you.
Perfect.
So at least for like a stint. Like a 6-week stint or something. I might just
absolutely, yeah.
It'd be really cool.
The thing is, the beauty, like you said, if you don't like it, you could always go somewhere else or go home. There's no risk really.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a traveler spirit as well. Like I quite like just getting up and going. I mean, obviously, the last couple of years, I suppose that's one of the reasons why I haven't thought about it, because my personal success has become quite apparent in the last couple of years, right? And of course, what we've been going through, it's kind of like there's no but I think it's now opening up again, and that's kind of why you've been out and about. But I imagine you must have had about a year where you were doing nothing, right? Or maybe you were already somewhere based during that.
2020 was horrible, as you know. I actually started traveling again in 2021. I just told myself, there's no way I'm staying in a lockdown New York, and I needed to do something different. So, I did actually go to Playa del Carmen, Mexico for, I think, 4 or 5 months in 2021. Yeah. And that kind of reignited my spark in traveling. And, my next trip after that was Medellin, and here we are. And I think things are looking like full swing is pretty much back or right around the corner. So, I've got, as you mentioned, I'm actually going to Miami for a week tomorrow. I've got a convention down there. And then I'm coming to London in April. We have, that marketing event. Yeah. And then hopefully link up with you. And then from there, I think I might just enjoy a summer in New York. Because New York is probably the best in the summer, and I feel like if you're gonna live here, even if you're traveling most of the year, you might as well that's not fun. You might as well be here for the part that is really good. So that's kind of my thought process, and then after that, I'll probably start looking at winter again to start traveling. So I kind of try to play it that way, like stay wherever it's warm, basically.
Follow the sun, yeah, absolutely. By the way, I've never been to New York. In my
you'll have to come out sometime. It's getting better again. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, I've got so many new friends all over the world, especially the last few years. And I can't believe I've never been to New York. I think that's a bit bonkers. I mean, I've been to the States like 10 times, but I just haven't been to New York. So, not yet, anyway. But I will be. Yeah, that will be on the list.
We'll get you out here. I'll show you some good food. It'll be good.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'd look forward to that. Yeah, I bet some nice restaurants in New York, right?
Yeah, for sure. We got some good. That's probably the best thing about New York. That's what keeps me here is the food. So.
Right. Yeah, and I can eat, by the way. Cool. Okay, so yeah, if you're a digital nomad and you're going to get out on the road, let me and Stefan know, and we'll definitely hook up with you when we're out and about in these hot countries following the sun. So back to WebinarKit, because right. Yeah, like obviously, so just to sort of go back like tiny steps. So you obviously were doing all these webinars. You were noticing that there was a few things. So just name like a couple of things that you were kind of like, what was frustrating you really? I suppose that's the main thing. Like what was making you feel like, I need to create this for myself, right?
Absolutely. So one of the big ones was at the time, a lot of the software didn't actually autoplay. So you would wait. There'd also be this bridge page. So you'd go through the opt-in page, and then you go to this bridge page. After that bridge page, oftentimes you had to click a button to go to the webinar room. And then in the webinar room, you had to play the video. And I'm like, why are there these 2 extra steps here that make it so difficult to this is supposed to be like a simulated presentation. Who has to press a button once, let alone twice? So that's something that we obviously did away with WebinarKit is, as you mentioned, you could set it up a few different ways now. We have a lot of functionality, but one of the main ways is, people will go into the waiting section. There'll be a little countdown timer. And once that countdown timer finishes, they will go right into the room, and the video will play at the exact time that it's supposed to play, and it will start going. So that is something that, absolutely it seems small, but it's so essential to your funnel running smoothly and increasing conversion. So, we had to fix that. And generally outside of that, I just found a lot of these software at the time to be kind of clunky, and, they were a lot of money for what they were really doing for people. So we also wanted to create something that was going to be a lot more affordable. And as you know, we are running some pretty insane deals, on our software. We are, both of our options right now are dramatically cheaper than all of the options out there. And I think for a while there was just no competition that was offering something a little bit more affordable. So I think that's now we have WebinarKit out there, and I think a lot of people are seeing, they're like, wow, this does a lot of things for the price point. It does everything I need. The automated software actually fixes a lot of the things that were wrong or more difficult to use about other solutions. And it's cheaper and does just as much, if not in some cases, more. So that's kind of really caught on, and we want to keep doing that. We want to keep providing the solution that's just easy. Oh, this is another thing. A lot of them were very complicated to use. A lot of people don't want to feel like they need some advanced degree to run some webinar software. So we also wanted to build something easy, get your funnel out there. And that was another thing that I think we ended up doing really well. So we just really want to keep running with something that's easy to use, affordable, runs like an actual, for the automated tool, runs like a totally natural flow webinar without these added steps. And you're not the first person to give us praise on that. We hear it quite a bit. So I think that's kind of the few main ones.
Yeah. I mean, and also just to clarify, guys, right? If you're running we'll come to that in a minute, actually, like who would want to run webinars. I think we'll talk more about that as well. But the fact is like you and I both run webinars, and when you're running webinars, what Stefan said there was like, when you go, if it's an automated webinar, right, it's a live experience. Now, obviously, we're not saying that you should say to people, run a live, tell them it's live when it's not, and things like that. But people do engage more when they expect it to be live, right? So if it's kind of like a live experience, people, when they press a button to start something, they know it's not live. And you will have a chat box and people can interact, and then you can kind of pick that up a bit later. You can have automated things going on in the chat box. But the thing is that if you have to press that button, right, that ruins that energy, right? Straight away, somebody's coming away from that. They're not going to be able to kind of see that that's a live experience. And that really does have a massive effect. And also I've got, if you want to run an automated webinar, because I've got to be honest, right? I've got to tell you this, because this is, I'm not particularly proud of this, because I wouldn't endorse this, but when I was getting started in business, I didn't want to go live. I used to get sweaty palms when I used to talk live, and I didn't want to run a live webinar because I just thought, I'm just going to clam up. I'm not going to be very good. I'm going to be really kind of I'm going to be tripping over my words. And I could see everyone else doing it. I'm thinking, that's not me. That's not me. So what I did was I got this webinar script, and I wrote it out, and I recorded it, and I recorded it, and I recorded it, and I recorded it. I think I recorded it 100 times before I even let that thing off to my audience, right? I must have spent 3 months, just literally talking to myself, recording this webinar. And then I had to keep tweaking it after that. And I should have just let the first one go live and test it and do some split testing. But, there was something inside me that said, no, I can't let that out. I can't let that out. And it took me so long. But the thing is that, So that kind of experience, when I was doing that, and sending those out, sending that out and putting that, I kind of was going through these kind of problems, sometimes you would lose signups, you'd lose all these things. And the thing is obviously when you're sending your traffic, it's some of these things are imperative, and you only know them when you do them, right? You only know them when you get going. So I kind of rambled a little bit there, but I'll kind of pull myself back. So that kind of pressing that play button is really vital. Also, having a pop-up form that can just I noticed that you put that in, that thing there where it just pops up so that it's literally fast. It's super fast. It's really good. And your price point, man, your price point for WebinarKit, I don't even know how you can charge that, right? Because that is ridiculously cheap. and you do I don't know if you still do this, but you were doing a one-time fee. Are you still doing that?
At the moment, depending on when people are watching this, the automated is still on a one-time fee. Our live is a recurring fee, but still way cheaper than anything else out there, at least from what we've seen. So
yeah. I mean, again, because we don't know what the prices are going to be when you watch this in the future, whatever. But it's really cheap, guys. I'm going to put the link on the screen in a bit, and you can go and check it out. So, but what I want to do is, because a lot of people now like interested in your story, are obviously just thinking about webinars. Who would want to run a webinar? Like where does a webinar come in useful? And let's talk about like why would we run an auto webinar and why would we run a live webinar? All
great questions, and I believe I'm just the guy to answer them. So as far as who can run a webinar, I mean, look, this can be applied to basically any industry where you want to build authority and you want to become the person that someone could know, like, and trust. And basically when someone watches your presentation, you become that person that they really feel like there's no other alternative. They've invested the time with you, hour and a half, 2 hours. Some webinars are shorter, 45 minutes to an hour. But generally, you have subconsciously built a relationship with these people. At the end of that presentation, they know your story and they know that what you're doing is great and they sympathize with you. It's like a webinar is so amazing. It's like having a casual chat with someone at a coffee shop, but you could do it over and over again. From one call and maybe with like 1,000 people. So a quick side note, I had a friend a few years ago who she was taking sales calls for her coaching, and she was doing the calls one by one as like discovery calls. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm doing 10 calls a day. I think I need to hire a sales closer. And I was like, well, you could do that. Or you could just filter all those leads to watch a webinar first. And on the back end of that webinar, have a call to action to book a call to speak with you. So what's going to happen is those people that are actually going to be booking a call are going to be way more qualified. They're already going to have been seen your whole pitch better than you could do one off over and over again. And they're generally going to get on the phone ready to buy. And if they're not quite ready to buy, they might just have a few more reservations they want to speak about with you on the back end of that webinar. And then chances are you're going to close 50, 75, 90% of these people, as opposed to a normal phone close rate, which might be 5 to 10%. So right then and there, I think for her, that was like an aha moment. It's like when you do a sales calls, it's kind of like giving a webinar one-on-one to all these different people. So right then and there, people who are using sales teams, if you filter all those leads through a webinar, you're going to be getting way more targeted leads to book the call with your sales team, and the close rates are going to go way up. I believe you'll close more for working a lot less. Outside of that, I mean, it can be applied to all sorts of different industries. I have a friend who, back to the digital nomad realm, he lives pretty much entirely off of credit card points and selling a course that teaches people how to credit card hack. I actually just booked my round trip to England, which normally costs $9,000. With the credit card point method he taught me, I paid about $700 round trip for business class. I don't think you're going to beat that. So, so it's points plus $700. And I learned that method from him. And I said to him, he's like, I don't get enough clients. He's like, I get a few clients through word of mouth every month. I'm like, dude, you need a webinar. This would be perfect. How I live pretty much free and fly business class around the world without spending a single dollar, or how I've averaged, because he's averaged, I guess, $15 per flight across like a few years. It's like how I average $15 a flight to go around the world. How many people who love to travel are going to watch that webinar? You know how many more clients he would book on the back end of that webinar? So I'm actually in talks with him now to help him create that webinar to, get the word out and get more people on board with that program. But the cool thing is you're getting all these people to learn more about you as a human being. And that in general increases the chance that someone is going to buy with you at some point. You're building a relationship. For example, you and me, we think of Russell Brunson. We know all about who he is, a lot of through his content marketing, really through webinars and a few other things. And we immediately associate him with success, just like that. So it's the same kind of idea. Anyone who's going to watch your webinar, if it's structured properly, is going to like you, going to want to sympathize, be more connected to you, is going to look up to you. All these different things, so powerful. And you know this just as well as I do. And outside of that, I have another friend who is really good at PR. He's gotten in the New York Times. He's gotten in Forbes. He does all these things. He doesn't hire an agency. He does it all himself. He's built a system that I've never seen. I said to him, I'm like, you need to be selling this information, and, you need to create a webinar. So he's building a webinar now too. So in short, it could be applied to all of these different industries. It could be applied. Agencies could use it. People selling courses. Fortune 500 companies could use it. Software companies can use it to build a demo. Ironically enough, we're actually now in the process of creating a webinar for selling WebinarKit, which is kind of funny. We haven't had it yet, but obviously, we've been busy making sure the software is great first, and now we're going to be moving on to developing an actual webinar. But yeah, at the end of the day, look, I whenever I meet entrepreneurs, it's kind of become a joke in some of my circles of friends, because I always go to people like, you know what you need? A webinar. And that's the kind of thing, because it's so powerful. But yeah, basically any sort of business can kind of benefit from it. I think anyone who sells something online right now, a service, a high ticket program, a course, a software, if you're in that space, even anyone I once saw a chiropractor who had a webinar on his website. And I went to him and I said, how's that webinar doing? He literally told me, he's like, once we had our marketer, whoever built it for him, he's like, sales went up. We had so much more foot traffic through the door, because if it's done properly, webinars just work. It's so much more effective than giving away an ebook or doing anything like that. It's so much better. So yeah, that kind of, I believe that was the main question. I'm trying to remember if you had any other sub questions.
And I'm just going to throw in my exact case study. So even though I recorded my thing 100 times before I did it, I obviously knew that once I got this thing out, it was going to work. So the thing is, obviously, I started, I came back in 2015. So I was kind of figuring out all this stuff, and I was kind of like, okay, I decided, right, I'm getting results with YouTube as an affiliate, right? I'm an affiliate marketer on YouTube. And then a buddy of mine said to me, you should be showing people. So I was like, oh, right, I really should. It hadn't even occurred to me. And I was kind of like, okay, I need to be showing people. And it was obvious to me at the time, just because they were everywhere, like webinars was the way to do it. I tried it with a VSL. Obviously, VSLs work really well, but again, it's all in context, like depending on what you're selling and what you're doing. So the VSL didn't work, right? I literally, and for those watching thinking, what's a VSL? VSL is like a video sales letter, right? So it's going to be like you pop up on a page and there'll be like a 20-minute thing, which is kind of, you can put that stuff in a webinar anyway. But again, like time and a place. But the VSL, VSLs do work, but that one didn't work for me for that specific thing. And I thought it's got to be a webinar. And like you just said, like obviously with webinars, you can build know, like, and trust. You can build a relationship. You can show people what's possible. You have a captive audience. So you've got these kind of things. And with an auto webinar, which is the first thing I ran, you can run these things 96 times a day, right? Because you can run them every single 15 minutes, right? Just in time. So you've got this kind of opportunity to hit people at any time of day or night, whatever you want to do. Literally, somebody could go to your landing page, right? And they can, I mean, you guys have all seen webinars, but, I'm just obviously stating some of this is obvious, but you go to a landing page and it's going to be like, right, sign up for my webinar. It's in, and you'll see a countdown timer like 6 minutes, right? So it's within that 15-minute time frame. It's like 6 minutes now, and then you're there, right? And you're watching that thing, and you've got that captive audience. And so I started off working one-to-one. So I was doing like one-to-one as a consultant. So I worked with someone for 8 weeks. I showed them my YouTube strategy, getting results. And I went in at $10,000, and I thought, no one's ever going to pay me that, because like I'd never charged that in my life for consultancy work. And I just thought it's not going to happen. But because I'd recorded this thing 100 times, it was actually quite good. So I set it out, and literally, I think the first call, second call, I wasn't really expecting anything. But I think the first call, it might not be, I can't even remember the first call, but the second call was a chap called Todd. And he got on the phone, and I told him what I did, and he went, okay. And he got his credit card out. And I was like, what? and then this thing was running, right? So my calendar started filling up and filling up and filling up. And I'm like, whoa, this is insane. So I was like, I'd wake up in the morning, there'd be like people booked into my calendar. And I'm thinking, Kate, this is all going on with this webinar, right? And then I just started putting in. And the funny thing is, the webinar was so good that I started having to pre-qualify people. So I was like, initially, I just had a link to my calendar. Then it was like, hang on a minute, are you a good fit? Because like some people would just get on the phone because they just like, I've just spent 2 hours with Paul Murphy. Now I get on a call with him, right? And
yeah.
You get treated a little bit famous, even though you're not. You've literally just, because you've just spent 2 hours with somebody, they come on the phone to you and they're like, I just want to chat away to you, So you kind of like had to then pre-qualify.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, obviously with time management and things like that, but that's another story for another day. But that's how powerful webinars are. And now I run most of my webinars live, right? I do have an auto webinar, but I just want to say this, guys, right? You don't have to say it's live for you to run an auto webinar. And I would recommend personally, you might disagree, but I would personally recommend not saying it's live. But when someone wants to sign up for a presentation, you don't have to say it's not live either. You can say,
exactly,
sign up for my training. Here it is. And then, it's that live experience. And then people can comment in the chat box. You can pick that up later and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and people do enjoy it more when they feel that they're part of something. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to what I just said there about like the auto webinars or anything like that.
Well, I think it's spot on. I think, even with, like you mentioned, you're selling something at $10,000. I don't know many mechanisms that would work besides a webinar to sell something at 10,000, and even if you are doing sales calls, filtering those people through the webinar first, they're going to be so much more understanding and likely to buy after spending, like you said, 2 hours with you. And it's just so powerful. And the other thing I like about webinars is, you mentioned VSLs. I feel like VSLs, because they're usually short form, don't have the same long-term effect, right? Because anytime someone gets on a webinar with you, let's say you run 3 webinars a week and you got 300 people live with you, right? At the end of the month, that's 1,200 people. All 1,200 people are not going to buy your course, but that's 1,200 people in the world that now have a certain relationship with you where they see you as an authority. Who knows what they might buy down the road? They're so warmed up to you. So you're not only getting direct sales, but you're building a long-term a brand for yourself. So it's covering direct response marketing, but it's also covering brand building. Whereas a VSL, if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it's not going to build the same kind of rapport long-term. You know what I mean? Some percentage of people are going to watch and then they're probably going to buy. Most people are going to move on with their lives. But someone who spends time on a webinar with you, they are going to remember you. They are going to remember you a month down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road. So it's so powerful, not only for the direct sales, but what it does for your brand if you're, going to be sticking around for a while,
Yeah. So one other question then, while we're on the subject, is because I know some people are going to be thinking, okay, I need a webinar, but what do I put in this thing, right? So what would you recommend? Like if we was to say like 5 main things to put in a webinar, what would you recommend?
Absolutely. So basically the first thing that you want to put in a webinar is obviously your headline, right? What is the hook, right? So for example, when I was doing Pinterest, my Pinterest webinar is how I've driven over 1 million free visitors to my websites from Pinterest for free. Simple hook. I personally like a very direct hook that's like, who is a business owner that wouldn't want 1 million free visitors, right? That's, who knows, if 10% of them convert on something, that's a lot of money. So that was my hook for that. The guy who does the airline flying, basically the hook that we came up with for him was how I averaged $15 per flight traveling around the world for years or something like that. The guy who's doing the PR course, he's going to be doing a title that's roughly on the lines of like how I've booked every major media publication from Forbes, New York Times to BBC without any previous experience and without hiring an expensive agency. So very direct, so you want to really make sure that hook is not deceitful. It's just come out and say what you're going to teach. What are you going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And so from there, you kind of want to go in and then go into what is your story? You know what I mean? Like you have a great webinar, you talk about your story. I talk about my story in my previous webinars. And that story needs to do a few things. And first of all, I recommend making it honest. Don't lie. You don't need to lie, right? But for me, with my Pinterest story, I was able to talk about how when I started, I had all these goals online. What was my why? My why was I wanted more time freedom and I wanted more time freedom and I wanted more passive income, right? So that was my why I got into running Pinterest at the time. So basically, if you can show people that this, no one, what was that saying? It's no one buys a shovel because they like, or no one buys a drill because they like drilling, right? You always buy a tool to make something easier for what you're really trying to do. Pinterest is that tool in that case, right? So whatever you're teaching or doing, you need to really sympathize with who is your customer and what are their goals. Their goals are not to get 1 million visitors from Pinterest. Their goal is, what am I going to do with those 1 million visitors? And what is that going to enable me to achieve in life? Why am I even running this business, right?
Yeah, right.
As much as you and me like marketing, at the end of the day, day, we care about the lifestyle that it provides more than anything.
Yeah.
So, so I think that's very important. So when you tell that story, it needs to sympathize with the viewer and what are they trying to achieve, and showing them that, whatever you're teaching them can really tie into what they are trying to achieve in their life. I think that's very important. And I honestly see that missing from a lot of webinars. Yeah. So that's a really good one. And then basically, that story has to show them your come up, where you started to where you are now, how you got there, and then really make sure they could relate with that story. So once you do that, you kind of move into the content, right? And there's different, I think that it's less important what you call the content piece. Like, for example, Russell Brunson talks about the 3 secrets, right? I've done the 5 pillars. I've seen people break the content down in all sorts of different ways. But in general, after your hook, then your story, generally want to have some sort of content. Now, my personal philosophy is you should teach something on your webinar. There's different schools of thought on this. There's no right or wrong. Some people say the less you teach, the more you sell. Some people say the more you teach, the more trust you build. I think that for me, a webinar is about mostly discovery. So learning about something and why it works so well, showing the audience that you have at least a little bit of knowledge to show that you're not completely full of and that you know a little bit of what you're talking about. And then from there, making them feel satisfied. Like, I always think to myself, would I feel satisfied with having attended this webinar if I don't buy anything? Would I feel satisfied that this was worth my time and not just a blatant sales pitch? So that's how I try to do it. And then from there, you kind of have to really make sure that it makes sense why there's a segue into what you're selling. Yes. So for example, with my Pinterest webinar, I taught them how to literally on the call SEO a pin on Pinterest. And I said, you can go and do this for as many pins as you want now. What I didn't teach them was the automation that I learned over years, scaling up with virtual assistants, all the things that really helped me take that method and take it to far and above the next level. So that was kind of my segue into, okay, now you can take what I taught you here and you can get great results. This is the bicycle. It's going to get you to where you need to go. If you want to buy my course, this is the rocket ship.
Yeah.
That's kind of the angle that I took. So it's kind of like, hey, I gave you the free value. You could do whatever you want with this. You now know about how great Pinterest is. You know about me. You like me now. You know about Pinterest. You know how to use Pinterest to get results. I'm giving you all that for free. You want to take it to the next level? Come join me in my course. That's basically the most simple explanation of a webinar I can give anyone.
Fantastic. Yeah. That emulates exact because So I'll just throw in a couple of things that I do, right? So when you're building, because it's know, like, and trust, and you want to build trust. So to build trust now, you could do 3 secrets where you kind of, back in the day, where you wouldn't show them anything, but you would show them what's possible, right? Now people are wising up a bit to that, right? So I believe I'm with you. I want to see that this works. I want to see something, but we're not going to be going into the technicals, right? Because that's what we do in our courses. And also, people will switch on that kind of feature brain where they're going to be kind of like, right, now I'm going to try and do that. And the thing is, you can't show them that stuff in again, like timeframes, again, these can vary, but I would recommend about 45 minutes to an hour's worth of training before you get to your pitch, right? Before you get to the point where you're going to offer your courses and things like that. Now, most people also know that there's going to be a pitch. So what I like to do is at the start, I tell them, I say, look, at the end of this, I'm going to show you what's possible. I'm going to go into this, but at the end of this, I am going to make you an offer. I don't know about you, but I personally, because most people kind of turn up and they think, oh, I'm just going to get pitched to. So I generally say, yeah, there's going to be an offer again, but obviously, what I also do is, again, you don't have to do this, but it's just something I like to do is, like, I will ask permission. I will say to people, look, did you get some value? Put a 1 in the chat box, and then all the ones blow up like 1, 1, 1. And then you say, right, okay, would you like to see what we got? Because, I've spoke to Stefan and he's agreed that I can show you, but we will end it there. And, obviously I've never had to end it there, but if I probably, at that stage, if that did not blow up, then I've not done my job correctly and nobody's going to buy off me anyway. So you might as well end it there. But the fact is usually it blows up and then people are kind of will relax and they'll listen to your pitch and they'll listen to what you've got. And I think, that's the key. Like what you said there was pure gold. So like literally building, showing them what's possible, putting some content in there. I think that's more important now in the last year or so than it was a couple of years ago. I don't think you needed to put that in before to build that trust, because you could just kind of show people results and then go, right, here's my course. I don't see that. I mean, I might be wrong. There might be people doing that and killing it. But personally, I think if I want to attend a webinar, I want to see something that's happening. I want to just a little nugget of something that's like, okay, that's really cool. And backstory is really important, because if obviously your backstory is going to be your story, and that's how people are going to relate to you. Like, people buy from people, right? People buy from people. So if you're going to let them know your story, then that's good. And also, and what I like to do with the backstory as well, I want to make it relevant to what they're watching. No one cares what you had for breakfast. No one cares, all this stuff. And I've seen a few webinars, where people like go, this is, I started off doing this and I did this and I did that. And you think that's not really relevant to what we're even talking. So, and I made this mistake as well. My first few webinars were like talking about all sorts of crap that was not relevant. And now right. I was working in insurance, and then I was walking around thinking, like, I need to put up a website, and I got this thing ranking on Google, right? That's the key element here, because my YouTube stuff is about Google, is about ranking. So tying the two together. And again, that's another thing as well. I think sometimes people learn that along the way, but it's a golden nugget there. If you can like make what you're talking about relevant. So your backstory is important, but if you make it relevant, then it's going to lead in, right? So, yeah. So that's absolute pure gold. So thank you so much for that. So, yeah. So we want a hook, we want a story. And I just want to add in the thing about the hook as well. I was listening to podcasts with Russell the other day, Russell Brunson. I listened to his podcast. And this is something that, again, I see some people getting wrong. If you sell the product on the hook, right, then that's going to be a hard sell. And if you sell the dream, like, what is it that your thing does for them that's going to be the most important thing? So, if I said to you, I'm going to show you how to rank your website on Google, right? That's exciting to some extent, but it's not really that exciting, because some people are going to be thinking, well, what do I care? Like, I'm running a Facebook ad, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
If I say to you, I'm going to show you how to get unlimited leads and customers in the next 30 days or something like that.
Lead with results.
Everyone wants that. Yeah. So if you sell the actual outcome or the dream or the outcome, however you want to put that, rather than the product, I think a lot of people make that mistake. So when you make your hook, it's going to be like, what is their desired outcome? Not necessarily what is your tool, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
makes total sense. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is another thing about webinars, I think you'll agree. Yeah. It's kind of hard to be really bad at webinars. You know what I mean? I feel like even an average webinar by an average speaker is going to get results. It might need some fine tuning, but it's one of the most foolproof methods I've personally seen. I've seen people with very mediocre, even a friend of mine who's a huge introvert built a webinar. He doesn't like presenting, and the language was so not dumbed down at all. It was very dumbed up, where you almost felt like you needed to have an advanced degree to understand what was going on. Even that was selling. He was selling a course on the back end of that. I'm like, I can't believe people are buying from this webinar. So it's just so powerful. It's like the difference between having a webinar and not having a webinar alone is a massive difference, especially in a lot of industries where webinars are still not really known about. You would think everyone knew about webinars by now, but I talk to marketers every day and they're like, or business owners every day, and they're like, never heard of that. That sounds really good. And I'm like, it's still completely unknown to a lot of different industries,
Yeah, totally. So one last question then. Again, I didn't script this, guys. This is literally just me and Stefan going, right, let's hop on a call. So we did it. But just because I think, like, as I'm chatting to you, I'm thinking like somebody's going to ask this, right? So what would be the best case scenario for running an auto webinar, and what would be the best case scenario for running a live webinar? And what would be the nuances between the two? Like, what should people consider? Like, because someone's going to be thinking, well, do I run it live? Do I run it auto? Like, what's the difference, right?
So my recommended, you asked me that earlier, I forgot about it. The best course of action, in my opinion, is start with a few live webinars. I think you should start aiming small. Try to aim for 1 month. This is a simple strategy. People could write this down. Start for 1 month, depending on if you already have an audience or not. Aim to get 25 people a week to watch your webinar, okay? 25 to 30, start there. Whether you have to run some Facebook ads, whether you have to use your existing audience, whether you have to put it on Eventbrite and meetup.com, put it on there and get people from there. Aim to do a live version of your webinar.
What was that last one? Could you just say that last one? Because I hadn't heard that one before.
Oh, meetup.com.
Meetup. Oh, so you can literally go and promote your webinar to meetup.com, can you?
Yeah, you could literally, there's people doing that. It's crazy. Yeah, another hack there. That's a new hack. Okay. Cool. There's people already doing it, and I have some friends who are doing quite well. I don't want to give too much away about that just yet because we're doing some tests ourselves. But
might be something you're teaching soon. Yeah, cool. No, I just picked up on that. Hang on a minute. He just mentioned something I've not heard of there.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically do that for 1 month, run the webinar live. I want you to run it live, or whoever's watching to run it live, because you want to sympathize with these people. You want to talk to these people. You want to hear, what are they saying in the chat? Talk to them directly, ask them questions while you're giving your presentation. You're going to get better at presenting by doing it live. And then after you hear all their questions, you're probably going to, after doing it 4 times live, you're going to probably make some tweaks. I think you've probably never had a webinar you haven't made tweaks to, because the more you present it, you're having little moments as you go through the webinar, like, oh, I feel like this section needs to be changed. Oh, someone just said something in the chat that makes sense. I should add something for that here. We're going through it and we're iterating. Yes. I think so. My recommendation is run it live 4 times once a week, get 25 to 30 people live. And then from there, you can move to automated. So you can move to like lives, where you run it at 7 p.m. every week at Wednesday, and you run your automated version and you're just answering questions in the chat. And then you could really scale up and put 100 automated events on per month. So 3 times a day for 30 days. And now you're running, 100 automated events, run the traffic through the system. Once you have those conversions down that you're looking for, and then scale up. So, that's kind of now again, there's no right or wrong framework, but that's a framework that I think a newbie or someone who's new with webinars could take that framework and then run with it.
Yeah, because you can run an auto webinar straight away, obviously, but obviously you might not have enough data to know whether this thing is going to work. There might be a few tweaks you need to make. There might be a couple of things. And also, if you've, like you just said, if you haven't run it live before, you're not going to know the type of questions that people are going to ask, right? So you might write down what you think people are going to ask and then answer those questions on the automated. Or if you run it live a few times, you're going to know, I've got a list. It's around here somewhere. But I've got a list of like 10 most common questions that pretty much always get asked on my webinars. So, I basically can put that into my auto webinar, or you can even take a recording of your live webinar, like your best performing live webinar. That can be your automated webinar as well, right? So you could run it a few times live and you might have nailed it on the first one, right? And then you might run it a few weeks and think, well, no, that first one was really good, so we're going to run that. And, if you're spending money on traffic and things like that as well, obviously these little tweaks of optimizations are going to be the thing that's going to make the difference in the bank balance at the end of the day, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an iterative process.
Yeah, really good insight there, man. Thanks. I really appreciate that. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to put a link, to webinar. I mean, I would normally at this stage say, why should someone buy WebinarKit? But we kind of just went through the whole thing. So, so the fact is that, right, okay, I'm just going to summarize, and then I'll let Stefan say anything he wants to say about it. But it's like cheapest stuff on the market, and it's great. He's built this stuff to solve your problems, right? And it's a one-time fee for the automated webinar, depending on when you're watching this. Super cheap. Go and grab it now, because I'm sure that eventually, because Stefan's developing this, and he's got his software developer Phil, and he's building his team. So there's going to be expenses involved soon, so it's going to go up in price, or he might even start charging monthly. He hasn't told me he's doing that, but that's his prerogative. And if you want to go and back that now, get that in there, start running your webinars. Live is super, super cheap compared to all the others, and it's amazing. And we've already run a webinar, and I love it. I've now got the live version as well, guys. So I'll be running some live webinars for you to show you how it works. But yeah, go to the link on the screen. It's tripfunnels.com/WebinarKit, and you can basically sign up and basically go and start running webinars straight away and not have to spend a fortune. So what else would you like to add to that, man?
Well, that sounds good.
Well, we just spent like a whole hour of like why you should run webinars. So it's kind of like a null and void question.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we pride ourselves on being an affordable solution. Yeah. I can't promise that the price on the automated webinar will be this forever. What I can promise is we will always be competitively priced. So whenever you're watching this, I promise we will still be competitively priced, whenever you're watching this. But right now it is a one-time price, which in my opinion is a no-brainer. There are a lot of software out there that are one-time pricing and then the teams disappear. We are not planning on doing that. We already have recurring in our business. So you know that we're here to stick around, and we pride ourselves on building a great reputation. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, man, and just all round great team. And just I feel like I've made some new friends online very recently, and just top people that look after you. So yeah, thanks ever so much, man. I really enjoyed this, and it was really good to sit down and pick apart your brain. There's just so much info there, and I'm gonna as I edit this, I'm gonna have to watch it all again. But thanks for your time, man, and I'll definitely be connecting with you soon. So yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for having me.